Hey man, what is going on, man? Goose Sports here, and we got a video. As this is SEC Huddle. This one's gonna be a little bit different, as this one is not going to be live. So we got to recap the last week of the regular season. Can't believe the regular season is over with. It just seemed like yesterday that we had week number one in college football, but now we got. I mean, it's done. It's done. It's done. All right, so here we go. So let's look at the go over the games real quick. And first one on the docket is going to be Ole Miss and Mississippi State. This was the early game on Friday, as Ole Miss defeated Mississippi State 38-19. This game was close for about a half, as you can see in the scoring plays. You had Keywan Lacey scored a touchdown for Ole Miss. Then Mississippi State came back and got a touchdown real quick from the quarterback, Mario Taylor. Ole Miss scored again by Harrison Wallace, scored a touchdown. It was 14-7 Ole Miss after the first quarter. In the second quarter, Mississippi State gets a field goal from Ferry. Ole Miss gets a touchdown from Stribling. It was 21-10. And then Mississippi, and that's right, that was it. After the first half, it was 21-10 Ole Miss. And that's when they were starting to pull away a little bit. But Mississippi State did score first in the third quarter, as they traded points in the third quarter. And it was 24-13 going into the fourth quarter. But in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss outscores them 14-6. As Strowman gets a touchdown pass from Chambliss. Mario Taylor gets a 35-yard run. For Mississippi State, it was 31-19. And then Deuce Alexander gets an 88-yard touchdown pass from Trinidad Chambliss. Ole Miss wins 38-19 as they improved to 11-1 in the SEC. I'm sorry, 11-1 overall, 71 in the SEC. Mississippi State was 5-7 overall. They're 1-7, so Mississippi State's going to miss out on the playoffs. Let's look at the stats here. Get out of that, so I don't get no freaking copyrighted. All right, Chambliss threw for 4 touchdowns, 359 yards passing. Mario Taylor threw for 178. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Mississippi State ran the ball for 262. Its leading ball carrier was the quarterback, Mario Taylor. And Bothwell had 80 yards on the ground for the Bulldogs. Over for Ole Miss, you had Keywan Lacey, 27 carries for 143. Trinidad Chambliss had 8 carries for 26. They ran the ball for 186. Both teams ran the ball really, really well. 4.5 yards per rush for Ole Miss. 6.1 for Mississippi State. And look at the leading receivers. You had Deuce Alexander for Ole Miss, 2 catches for 94. And Brennan Thompson had 6 catches for 80 for the Bulldogs. So Ole Miss wins 38-19. And this is for the sacks. Womack, ex-LSU player, had a sack for Ole Miss. Mississippi State didn't get a sack. Leading tackler was Smith with 13. And Guchkin for Ole Miss with 9. So 13 for Mississippi State, 9 for Ole Miss. All right, so that was Friday's football game. Now we got to back up a little bit and go to the middle game. Is Georgia defeated Georgia Tech 16-9. As this game was really a defensive battle. As Georgia Tech the Georgia Tech defense has been playing so poorly as of late, but they did hold Georgia to 16 points, and their offense was just not good enough for Georgia Tech, as they weren't able to score any touchdowns. And if you can't score any touchdowns, man, it's really hard to beat a team like Georgia. All right, so let's look at the scoring. We got Burr kicked the field goal for Georgia Tech. They led 3-0 in the second quarter. It was all Georgia. Two field goals and a touchdown from Branch. It was 13-3 Bulldogs going into the second half. In the second half, Burr gets a field goal for Georgia Tech. It was 13-6. Another field goal. This is for Georgia. There's a 50-yard field goal for Woodring. They went up 16-6. Georgia Tech comes back with a field goal with 3:30 to go in the game. makes it 16-9, and they did get the ball. Tech did have the ball for one last play. Excuse me. As a Hail Mary to the end zone was incomplete, and Georgia was able to hold on. And with the win, they really, I think they really cement themselves into the playoffs at 11-1. If they were 10-2, and then if they would have lost this game, Georgia, and then they go lose to Alabama in the SEC title game at 10-3, then you're kind of shaky there. But 11-1, 11-2, probably 12-1, or 11-2, no matter what happens in this SEC title game, Georgia is a lock for the playoffs. Let's look at the stats. The total yards was 260 to 250. I should have done this for the Mississippi State game. Turnovers were a piece. First downs 19 to 14. Penalties were kind of even. First downs were only 2 more for Georgia. So all in all, this was kind of an even game. But just what happened was Georgia got the touchdown. Georgia Tech was unable to get a touchdown. As Hayne King threw for 181 yards, 1 interception. Gunnar Stockton only threw the ball for 70 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Frazier had 108 yards on the ground. Haynes King usually runs the ball better than that, but 39 yards on the ground. Branch had 53 yards receiving. Canyon had 54. Each team had Miller had a sack. Boyd had a sack. And then Bolt had 9 tackles, and Lightsley had 12 for the Yellow Jackets. All right. Now we got the night game on Friday night. This one was a classic, as Texas upset the number 3 team in the country, the Texas A&M Aggies, and denying them a chance to go to Atlanta and play for their very first SEC title. So Texas denies Texas A&M their chance to win an SEC championship for the first time. All right, so let's get the score. We got field goal by Shipley for Texas. They led 3-0. Then A&M gets the field goal in this. This is all the second quarter. A&M gets a field goal by Zirkle. Touchdown by Concepcion. It was 10-3 A&M going into the halftime break. But in the second half, it was all Texas as they outscored them 24-7. It was all Texas. As Shipley gets a field goal, man, how many Shipleys do they have in Texas, man? It seems like every single year, Texas has some Shipley on the football team. Man, I just, man. How many got over there in Texas? So Texas led 10-6. I'm sorry. A&M led 10-6 after the field goal by Shipley. And then Texas goes ahead on a Wingo touchdown pass. It was 13-10. And then in the fourth quarter, Townsend had a touchdown for Texas. It was 20-10. A&M comes back with 9:15 to go. E.J. Smith with a 13-yard run. But with 7 minutes to go in the game, Arch Manning had a 35-yard run that scored a touchdown. And it was 27-17 Texas. And that was the final. All right, let's get the the total yards was 397 to 337. 2 turnovers, both by A&M. First downs were kind of even. Penalties were kind of even. Third downs, each team got 4 third downs. So all those were kind of even. Just the two turnovers really hurt A&M. 2 turnovers really hurt Texas A&M winning this football game. So Marcel Reed had 2 interceptions, threw for 180. Manning threw for 179 and a touchdown. Weiser had 155 yards on the ground. Reed had 71. Concepcion had 57 yards receiving. Injuries had 93. And Simmons had a sack. Odom had a sack. And then Brooks had 12 tackles. And LeFou had 11 for... Brooks had 12. And LeFou had 11. All right, let's go. Let's go back to the Saturday games. As we'll start off. We'll start off with this game here. Oklahoma and LSU. Oklahoma wins 17-13 as they get a late touchdown to win the game. 17-13 as LSU's offense was just totally inept. Probably this was. I know it's Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma has a good defense, so I'm not taking away things. I'm not going to take anything away from Oklahoma. But this was the worst. This had to be the worst we played offensively all year. We get an interception right off the bat, and It's first and goal, and what does Van Buren do? He throws an interception right back in the end zone, and Oklahoma thwarts the scoring chance for LSU. I mean, if LSU scores that touchdown, who knows what would have happened? I mean, it woulda, coulda, shoulda, but it didn't happen. So Oklahoma wins 17-13. They get the scoring off first. It was 3-3. I'm sorry, 3-0. As Sandell gets a 30-yard field goal. In the second quarter, Ramos gets a field goal, and it was 3-3 going to the halftime break. In the third quarter, both teams exchanged touchdowns. Xavier Thomas had a 1-yard pass from Michael Van Buren. It was 10-3 LSU. Then Oklahoma goes down and get with like 2 minutes to go in the quarter, as Burks gets a 45-yard pass from Mateer, and it was 10-10 going to the final quarter. In the final quarter, what was the key? What was the big difference? Oklahoma got a touchdown. LSU did not. Ramos gets a 43-yard field goal. It was 13-10. But then Oklahoma got a 58-yard pass on a busted coverage with 4:16 to go in the game. LSU had a chance to maybe take the lead late in the game, go up on fourth down. They don't get it. So Oklahoma wins 17-13. And the total yards, I mean, 390. I mean, they had a lot more yards than we did. 393 to 198. They did turn the ball over 3 times at Oklahoma. LSU's 1. First downs was 14-9. LSU didn't have 10 first downs. That's just bad. Penalties also cost Oklahoma, as they had 4 more penalties than LSU did. So yeah, the turnovers and penalties kind of kept this game close, but it's what it is, man. So Mateer threw the ball for 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, threw 3 interceptions. And LSU's offense still couldn't whatever, man. All right. Van Buren threw for 96 yards. 96 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Durham had 42 yards on the ground. So did Blaylock. Receiving yards, Satigna had 121 for Oklahoma. Xavier Thomas had 30. I mean, the tackles, Keys had 8. Daniels had 7 for Oklahoma. But yeah, just a pathetic performance offensively by LSU. All right, I want to get that game off. I wanted to get that game out the way. Let's look at this was the early games, I believe. I think this was the 11 o'clock game, as Louisville beats Kentucky 41-0. As Kentucky needed a win to get to bowl eligible, and their in-state rival said no dice, man. So Louisville wins 41-0. I mean, I'm not going to spend much time on a game that's 41-0. Look at the total yards, 440 to 140. First downs, I mean, it was just total domination by Louisville, as Moss had 182 threw for 3 touchdowns. Jennings had 113 on the ground on 20 carries. Stewart had 1 reception for 43 yards. So yeah, Louisville just dominated this game against Kentucky, and kind of cost Mark Stoops' job. Who knows what would have happened if he won that game. All right, let's go. Next game we're going to look at is Missouri and Arkansas. As Arkansas ends the season 0-8 in the SEC, Missouri is 4-4, 8-4 overall. Arkansas is 2-10. As Missouri won over there up in Fayetteville. All right, we got Roberts had a touchdown for Mizzou in the first quarter, was 7-0. And first quarter. As Blake had a 16-yard pass from KJ Jackson, was 7-7. Tie game going into the second quarter. In the second quarter, Arkansas actually outscored them 10-7. As Shaw gets a fumble return for a touchdown. Pribola gets an 11-yard run. It was tied 14-14. Right before the halftime break, Arkansas gets a field goal, and it was a 17-14 Hogs. In the second half, you can see Missouri outscored them 17-0. As Hardy gets a 53-yard run, Oliver Robbins gets a 41-yard field goal, and Coleman gets a 67-yard punt return, and Missouri wins 31-17. And the total yards 347 to 246. Mizzou did have a turnover. First downs was 26-15. Penalties, six. I didn't realize 16. How do you have 16 penalties? That is just. I just can't see how that's even possible. 16. I mean, they must have been calling everything on Arkansas because they say you can call a penalty every single play. Looks like they did for Arkansas. It says 16 penalties. All right, let's look at the stats. Jackson had 126 through the air. Prabula only had 25 yards passing, but I mean that's really surprising because of Arkansas's defense was so horrible this year. But Hardy did have 157 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Washington had 50 yards on the ground for Arkansas. Blake had 53 yards receiving. Norfleet had 13 yards receiving. McClellan had 2 sacks for Mizzou. Walker had 1 for the Hogs. Trotter 10 tackles, and Worth had 10 tackles. All right, let's go next. Okay, we're gonna do there you go. Clemson and South Carolina, in-state rival. Clemson wins 28-14 as South Carolina had a very disappointing season. They're 4-8 and finished season 4-8. Clemson also a disappointing season as they finished 7-5. Let's look at the total yards: 415 to 422. South Carolina had 4 turnovers to 1 for Clemson. First downs were 25-17. And you can look at the stats. Third down was also a big part of why Carolina lost this game. 1 for 11 on third downs. Clemson was 7 for 17. And on fourth downs, they were 1 for 3. So theoretically they were 2. No, they converted 2 of those third down because you same possession. So they had 2 they converted. If you want to include the third down conversion with the fourth down conversion and combine them, I guess they converted 2. But anyway, let's see. All right, so Randall gets to scoring first for Clemson. Gets a 10-yard run. They led 7-0. Then Carolina gets a 53-yard pass from Sellers to Harbor with 7-7. This game was pretty close until the second half. First half was back and back. Then Clemson gets a touchdown from Klubnik. 3-yard run was 14-7. Then Carolina comes back with a 74-yard pass. Manus ties up at 14, and then Hauser gets a 32-yard field goal, and it was 17-14 Clemson at the break. But in the second half, it was Clemson didn't need to score much, but they scored 11 points. As Hauser gets a 42-yard field goal, and then they get a 12-yard interception return for a touchdown. So Clemson didn't score any touchdowns in the second half offensively, but they were able to get the big defensive touchdown, and they win 28-14. As we went over that, and let's see, we got Sellers had 381 on the ground, 381 passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Klubnik had 268 through the air, 1 interception. Faison had 37 yards on the ground for South Carolina. Randall had 102. Moore 101 receiving yards for Clemson. Jacobs had 141 for South Carolina. Parker had 3 sacks. Williams had 1. Tackles were 9 for Brown and 8 for Johnson. So, yeah, just disappointing seasons for both these teams. But for Clemson's sake, no, they go into a bowl. All right, let's go to a game that used to mean something. And this game used to mean something, but it don't anymore. I mean, Florida and Florida State, both teams were under 500. Well, actually, Florida State had a chance to get bowl eligible, and they were unable to, as they let Florida beat them 40-21. So both these teams, just horrendous seasons for both these teams. One team fired their coach, one team is keeping their coach, which makes no sense. But Florida State didn't win a game away from Doak Campbell. They were 0-5. They finished 5-7 on the year. Florida was 4-8, and all 4 of those wins were at home. They finished 4-2. So. Look, the total yards 440 to 407, 2 turnovers to 1. First downs were close, 26-23. All in all, I mean, you look at the stats, man, and they're pretty close. I mean, if you look at the stats, I mean, 2 turnovers to 1. You're like, okay, this game should have been closer than 40 than 21. I mean, the third down conversions weren't really out of kilter. Penalties weren't really leaning one way. They both converted 2 fourth downs. But Florida was able to get the victory 40-21. As Smack gets a field goal, it was 3-0 Gators in the first quarter. They also get another touchdown by Sturdivant. It was 10-7 Florida going into the second quarter. In the second quarter, the Seminoles outscored them 14-7 as Dancy gets a 13-yard pass from Castellanos. It's 10-7 Florida. Then Livingston gets a 9-yard pass from Lagway. Florida led 17-7. And then Castellanos gets a 4-yard run before the halftime break. It was 17-14 Florida going into the second half. But in the third quarter, Florida outscored them 14-0. As touchdown from Hansen, field goal by Ball. It was 31-14 Florida going into the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, the Gators outscored them again 9-7. As Florida gets a field goal, a touchdown, missed the extra point, and the Seminoles get a touchdown as well. It was 40-21. Man, but it's going up in the 90s, watching these two teams play, and seeing them just not relevant at all on the national scale is just blows my mind. All right, then we got Vanderbilt. What? This right? Vanderbilt beats Tennessee 45-24. Vanderbilt wins the state of Tennessee this year. Let's look at the yards. Vanderbilt put up 579 yards of offense to 382, and they also had two turnovers. Look at the first downs, 27-21. The penalties were about even. No third downs. 7 out of 10 and 12 out of 19 are really good conversion rates on third downs. But Tennessee went for it on fourth down twice and didn't get it. But man, this is 45-24. Let's look at the stats real quick, and then let's look at this. Let that shit play. All right, so Bishop gets a touchdown for Tennessee. They led 7-0, and then Alexander gets a touchdown for Vanderbilt, and it was 7-7 going into the second quarter. In the second quarter, it was 14-14. Both teams scored the same amount of points. As Young gets a touchdown for Vanderbilt, Brazel gets a touchdown. Bishop, Richardson, and it was 21-21 going into the second half. And as we've seen here, some of these games are decided in the third and fourth quarter. So in the third quarter, they outscored them 10-0. Did Vanderbilt, and they also scored them out 14-3 in the fourth. We'll get to that in a minute. But Alexander gets a 5-yard run, and Taylor gets a field goal, and it was 31-21 Vanderbilt going into the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, all Tennessee can do is get a field goal. As Gilbert gets a 25-yard field goal, then Pavia a touchdown, Alexander a touchdown, and Vanderbilt wins 45-24. Man, as Pavia's doing it again, man. One TD, 2 picks, threw for 268. Aguilar threw for 299 and a touchdown. Bishop, 20 carries for 97, 2 touchdowns. Pavia ran the ball for 165, 20 carries and a touchdown. Sherrill had 76 yards receiving. Brazel had 91. Wood had a sack, and Talander had half a sack. Where's the other guy? Because if there's a half a sack, somebody else is tied with him half a sack. So there should be 2 guys listed. Then you got Fontenette with 8 tackles, and Turrentine had 10 for Tennessee. All right, let's look at the last game, and this game was another good game. On the Plains, Alabama wins 27-20. As another tough game on the Plains. Whenever these two teams play in Auburn, it's always close. It doesn't matter if Auburn stinks or good. Auburn really wasn't that great this year. They were 5-7 overall. But every time they play Alabama in Auburn, it's always a close game, man. And look, LSU knows very well playing over there. Other SEC teams know very well playing over there. It's a problem. Now Alabama did come out out the gate hard as they get a field goal from Talty. It was 3-0. Horton gets a touchdown. Another touchdown by Horton. It was 17-0 Alabama. It looked like they were just going to run Auburn out the gym, off the field. But 2 field goals by the Tigers, and it was 17-6 going in to the third quarter. In the third quarter, Simmons gets a 64-yard pass from Ashton Daniels, but 17-13 tied. Then field goal by Talty again. 20-13 Bama. In the fourth quarter, Cobb gets a 2-yard run. It was tied 20-20. 20-20 in the fourth quarter. Then Alabama gets a touchdown by Horton, and it was 27-20. Bama wins the game, and with that win, they go to the SEC title game to face Georgia. Look at the total yards, 441 to 2. I mean, Auburn's offense is really, that's been one of their problem this year is their offense, but it wasn't the total yards wasn't a problem. 441 to 280. It did have 2 turnovers, which hurt. First down, so 20-18. Look at the penalties. I mean, everything looks like looks like this. The stats show this should have been a close game. And it was a close game. All right, so Simpson had 122 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. Daniels had 1 touchdown, 1 pick, threw for 259. He also was the leading ball carrier, 23 carries for 108. Jay Miller had 83 yards on the ground. Horton had 35 yards receiving. Simmons had 143. Xavier Atkins, 1.5 sacks. And Smith had 1 sack. Yes, Atkins is an ex-LSU player. Lawson had 7 tackles, and Crawford had 5. So the game is set for next week. Let's look at the standings real quick in the SEC, and then we'll look at. We only got 1 game next week. Of course, you got to do this. It never just goes to SEC. You got to go look it up. All right, so Alabama and Georgia and Ole Miss and Texas A&M all were tied at 7-1 in the conference. But the tiebreakers, it's Bama and it's Georgia yet again. Bama and Georgia yet again for the SEC championship. Again, let's look at the. I'm going to get to it this way. Here we go. All right, so look at the ESPN, their matchup predictor is Bama has a 51.1% chance of winning over Georgia, 48.9%. As the line on the game is Georgia is actually favored by 2.5 points. Over under is 47.5. Yes, man, it's just Georgia and Bama again for the SEC championship. Can Georgia beat Alabama for the SEC title? The last few times they played them for the SEC title, they were unable to do it. All right, let's look at the stats real quick. As Ty Simpson's thrown for 25 touchdowns on the year, 4 interceptions, thrown for over 3,000 yards. Gunnar Stockton has thrown for over 2,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 INTs. Neither running back has gotten over 1,000 yards. Even look at Alabama their leading rusher is under 500. Usually Alabama's they got somebody that's close to 1,000 yards, seems like. But Jay Miller has 3 touchdowns on the year, 493. Frazier has 809 on the ground. Branch has 691 yards receiving. Bernard has 700. Pierre has 6 sacks. Cole has 4. And then the tackles, you see Allen has 80 and Jefferson has 63, excuse me. But yeah, that Alabama's problem, one of the problems this year is their inability to run the ball effectively, like you normally see an Alabama football team run the ball. Normally you see Alabama physical and running the football. But this game is going to be at 3 o'clock. I think it's 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Central on Saturday. Georgia, Bama, yet again for the SEC title. And can Alabama afford a loss at 10-2? I don't think you penalize Alabama for playing an extra game for an SEC championship. I don't know how you penalize them for having to play an extra game. Same with Georgia. Georgia's 11-1. Let's say they lose 11-2. Georgia should definitely be in the playoffs. At 11-2, if they lose this game. I think if Bama's 10-3, I think they definitely should be in the playoffs. You can't penalize them for having to play an extra game for a conference championship. Especially, I don't know, man. But I know people can say, well, they lost to Florida State. I mean, I get that. Florida State's a bad football team. I get that. I get that, but I mean, what are you gonna do? You gonna put Vanderbilt over Alabama? Bama beat Vanderbilt, so that's the problem I have. That's the problem I have with this whole thing. Is if Bama loses and they're 10-3, I think they still should get in the playoffs because they're playing for a conference title. You can't unless Bama gets unless Bama gets obliterated against Georgia, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that's the only way that Bama should not make the playoffs is if they get obliterated by Georgia. But I don't think it's happening. But let me know what you guys think. So there it is, man. Yeah, so we got man. Can you believe that we in the last week we're in championship week of college football. So there it is, man. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.